It is my pleasure to present to you the oldest building or the oldest story building in Imo State. This story building is today known as Ulo Ukwu Osunwa. That name was given to it when it was built in 1870. Yeah. It was a good history, and we know from the story or from the history of this building that there was a ruler, there was a chief, a paramount chief or Eze in the era of the colonial administration. He was Eze Osunwa, who happened to be the strongest or the most celebrated Eze at that time in Imo State and in Okigwe zone. Eze Osunwa was born in the old town of Umuabobara, today known as Ezihe. Once again, he was the most celebrated Eze and the strongest Eze in the whole of Okigwe zone during the era in the era of colonial administration. This house, as we know it today, Ulo Ukwu, the name did not come by chance. It was called Ulo Ukwu because at the time when it was built in 1870, it was the biggest house ever seen in Imo State of those days. It is a story building, and it was the only story building in Okigwe and Imo State in general. Today, we are celebrating the 152 years of this, the age of this house. Ulo Ukwu Osunwa was built by some foreign engineers and builders from Israel, Cyprus, and Egypt. Every material used in constructing or building this house was imported from either Cyprus, Lebanon, Israel, or Egypt. The engineers that worked there during the building of this house, we are about 10 of them, all foreigners. In those days, the cost of this building was big enough to build a city or to develop a city. And you can see a house of this age, 152 years, is still strong. Stronger than most of the buildings around us today. It has stood the test of time. It has it has withstood many devastating seasons in the last 152 years. Ulo Ukwu Osunwa, as I said earlier, was the foremost story building in Imo State. built by the then Eze Osunwa, who ruled in the land of Umabobara, today known as Ezihia Autonomous Community. It is a nice history to remind us or to celebrate this oldest and foremost story building in Imo State. Thank you. Let us not forget that Eze Osunwa was a grandson of Obobara Onyosu, a warrior of his time, the strongest warrior ever noticed or heard of in the whole of Igbo land. In the history of Igbo people, Obobara Onyosu had been the strongest, the most dreaded warrior heard of in the history of Igbo people. We cannot describe this house or talk about this house without giving reference to Obobara Onyosu, who was the grandfather of Osunwa, the strongest Eze in his time, who built this house in the year 1870 with a fortune that was enough to develop a whole city. There are other history or aspects of history that surrounds this building, but the most important of them all is that it is the oldest in Imo State, still standing. This house is still standing, and it's even stronger than most of the modern buildings around us. Again, we have to also recognize the fact that every material put in the building of this house was imported. Every engineer